For joining us either electronically or here in person. Dan Lynch just looked at me and said it's nice to have an in-person meeting, and we certainly concur with that. I will say it's been wonderful working with ASM, and they've taken every precaution that's necessary. I think we all feel rather safe. We even have coffee service this morning that was served to us, so that we didn't touch anything, which was a very good thing. And we're all learning those protocols. I had really hoped that we would have to have more smiling faces here in the room. This is an important meeting for us because we will be voting on or listening to and then making a decision on the ASM contract for the next 5 years. I would also say, we put this program, we put the schedule together at the beginning of this year, actually at the end of last year. Hello?
Good morning, everybody. It's Sarah.
Hey, Sarah, thank you. We do have a quorum, and we're just starting out. We put a calendar together in hopes that people would make the Convention Center Authority a priority, especially during and I do still keep saying I have to find a different word for challenging, but interesting and challenging and kind of brutal times. And we're going to have some very frank discussions in this meeting and next meeting. And so I would ask you all to please take a look at your calendars and make sure that September 24th, which is our next meeting, is...
Hi, it's John McDonald.
Okay, John, we're all here. We've just started, and I've just asked everyone to check their calendars for September 24th, because that is the meeting that will be approving budget for next year. So every meeting we have has very important agenda items that we need to address. And we thank everyone who is able to join us by phone. We hope we'll be able to increase the in-person part of our meeting. I think it's important that as we're trying to develop business for the future, that we kind of set the example, that we're doing everything correctly, that we're ready, and that especially when we need to convince others that we're ready to do business, that we hopefully can do business as well in person. So with that said, and we can take a look at, and we did change the agenda a bit, so first we'll have approval of the draft. Everyone's had a chance to review those. Any questions? May I have
No question.
Okay, a motion?
Motion, John.
Okay, John, thank you. Second?
Second, Sarah.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Actually, if I could interrupt, were you at the last board meeting and a member then?
I was a member. I was on the phone.
Oh, you were on the phone. Okay. I'm sorry. I just know that Bob is always particular about if people are physically or on the phone
Ghost
present.
of council is in the...
The 30th of April.
Good question.
Before your appointment, I think,
Okay.
before we had an official.
So we can move on to the treasurer's report. Steve, if you want to intro and...
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And I hear Lynn in the background, so I know she's there.
I'm here.
Yeah. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of change to report, but I will pass it on to Lynn to move forward on that.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to pick up on a word that I probably never used before in a financial report that our esteemed chairperson just used, brutal. Financially, obviously, this is a real challenging time. As was just indicated by the treasurer, there's not a lot of details to go into, but there are some items to highlight. I'm actually going to go a little bit reverse order this time. I would like to start with the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position, and then I will lead into the statement of net position. So you should have all received the financials, or they are in your books. For those of you who are here under tab 3. Thank you. So June, obviously on the far left, like I said, underscores the word brutal. Total income, $558 at the top there. Leading over toward the right and looking at more year-to-date, obviously the first few months had been strong, but now we're just under 40% of revenue. And again, I kind of need to underscore that that 40% represents the first 2.5 months where things were operating as expected. So this is a truly unprecedented time frame, obviously. Slightly better news, though, that when we look at the expenses, there has been every effort made to really contain expenses as much as possible. ASM has really worked with us to manage costs and really take a hard look at things. And unfortunately, there are some expenses that you just can't obviously get around, but expenses are running at about 82%. So, while income is down, expenses are down somewhat. But if you look in the middle of the page at the net ordinary income loss, we're about $308,000 more of a loss than we had budgeted. And obviously, as we all know, we continue to see that grow, even as we're sitting here now in a new month. On the hotel occupancy tax, if you look at line 4100, we're just over 50% of budget. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the statement of net position. But again, the entire industry, it sounds like a broken record with all the negativity here, but it's just a tough situation, and as I mentioned, kind of an unprecedented time for us, and without a real true end in sight. So this will continue. I do want to note that when you look at the line 9999, loss gain on the disposal, especially for the newer members, really that just represents our final true-up of the transfer of e-com. We did get the final closing statement, and we were able in June to do all the minor adjusting to get rid of anything related to parking, with one exception. Any of the final little back and forth with things like water bills and so on and so forth. So while that doesn't really match year-wise, obviously we had recorded the majority of it in 2019. This is just the little lagging bit. But once you've finalized your audit and so forth for 2019, you can't go back. It is highly immaterial, so it's not of concern from an audit purpose. Similarly, down in line 8500, the e-com property expenses, same thing. So if you look at the bottom, unfortunately, we're about $683,000, essentially worse than what we had anticipated, for all the reasons that I just mentioned. Again, I'll get into a little bit more on the statement of net position, but does anybody have questions on the statement of revenue and expenses?
Any questions? Any questions on the phone?
No.
This is Joe. I have a quick one.
Okay.
Not necessarily germane, but slightly. Do we have a sense of what our competitors in the region are dealing with to the degree that we are dealing with, comparatively speaking. Not just that business is down. I get that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real numbers for those facilities that are public.
Joe, this is Duncan. What ASM has reported to us is their numbers go from 0 to something very, very low, in 25% range perhaps. So what we're trying to do...
Is that just for facilities that they are in business with, or facilities in general in the region that we compete with?
I think both. You have some in the state that have closed.
Joe, this is
Got it.
With ASM. Syracuse Convention Center is completely closed, and Buffalo as well. So we're one of the few that are open and operating within the guidelines, with the small numbers.
And how bad their beatings are is what I'm interested in. I know they're closed, they're not generating everything, but I'm talking about it from more, and forgive me for not being kind of a risk perspective. Like I'm not worried about us opening up. We're open. Like there be competitors that may not make it. I don't need an answer. I just want to know if we're looking at it from an industry and market standpoint.
You're getting a lot of positive head nodding in this room, Joe. Yes, there are people who are not going to make it. There are facilities that are not going to make it.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
So continuing with the statement of net position, and the reason I did this second is to get a little projection oriented from an asset and cash position. I'm going to actually not necessarily start with cash, but I'm going to start with line 1150, the occupancy tax. As you see, as of June 30th, we had anticipated, which was all estimated at that point in time, $624,000 coming in, which represented March through June. So March, April, May being quarter two, and for a reminder, their quarters are not calendar quarters. So March through May is considered the second quarter. And then we had about $156,000 for June. We did just this week, I think it was earlier this week, we received that quarter two amount. So of the $624,000 that you see on the paper before you, $468,000 of that was what we had estimated for quarter two. We received $443,000, so you're about $25,000 below what we had anticipated. But I do need to question that while that actually in this time seems a bit rosy, of the amount that we just received, about $292,000 of that was actual quarter two, and $150,000 was delinquent catch-up payments. We do still have some level of delinquents that will carry into quarter three, but not at that same $151,000 level. So, while I'm pleased that through June 30th, did somebody just drop? Okay. Through June 30th, we weren't too far off. I think we're going to see continued differentiations going into the quarter three, which is June on. And I'm actually going to be working with Duncan and my person on revisiting our estimating for that purpose. And I know Mr. Hoffman just kind of nodded very, very vigorously, and I'm sure Jill is as well from Discover, so we're going to have to bring that down.
Tell me again, the actual for the quarter was 292. So of the 443 we received, 292,000 was quarter two, and 151,000 was delinquent payments. And I think we have about 61,000 of delinquent to carry over.
That's correct, of which we portioned that 30%, or excuse me, 50%, 30,000 become toward the authority.
Right.
Year over year, June over June, we were looking at $15.7 million in revenue, on which the sales tax would be, or the sales tax based versus about 5.4 or so for this June. So essentially, it's 2/3 down, 1/3
Right.
remains, just for perspective.
So that's obviously a key for our future and the ability to keep paying those expenses. I know later in this meeting we'll have some more information and details from ASM on what has been booked and the 2021 even. But back up from a cash perspective, realistically, we've really looked at things, and we can get through the end of the year and probably into the first quarter of 2021 using our existing resources and not having to tap into reserves. And I kind of have to, as the conservative accountant that I am, I have to asterisk it, and that's nothing major going astray or any bizarre things coming up that are expensive, but we certainly don't foresee any of those. So, for this year, I think we feel financially we can remain stable, clearly not in a position that we would want to be in because we're using what little bit we have, but at least I feel comfortable, and I think Duncan can attest to this, that we're going to be able to pay our bills, continue to work with ASM, and make sure that we can properly fund the activity that we have, and hopefully start to see things pick back up. Again, it's all going to be related to the events that we can ultimately book and the hospitality industry and where the hotel occupancy tax goes. So like I said, it's pretty rare that I've had to give such a negative report, but I'm trying to point out some of the positives.
I would just like to say that, and Duncan and I have had this conversation a lot, that I think part of the job of this board is to take a look as we move forward. I don't want to have an empty bucket at the beginning of and start, diving into reserves. So I think changes, we're going to have to look at some changes that will have to be made in expenses. I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's going to be tied to where we see things booking. And one of the things I was going to emphasize is I think we need to take a realistic view of the bookings and really, I know Shannon works and her team works so diligently at getting things booked, but I think we need to take a hard look at how many more we truly do feel might be postponed, how many are starting to increase their nervousness and things of that nature.
Well, it also depends on what kind of direction we're getting both from state and county about what we can or cannot do.
Correct.
And that will really predicate what Shannon can do, what Doug can do.
True.
Yes. Well, and I think we're all, at least those of us physically here today, I think are seeing the efforts being made, and I think that publicizing those efforts is going to be a really big kudos too, because as was mentioned, some other facilities are completely closed, and in the news you hear of various places not taking the same level of precautions. So I think in some ways we have an opportunity. But, fiscally, the bottom line is that opportunity has to equate into dollars in the door. So, again, I feel like it's kind of a dire prediction, but I also do want to assure everybody that our bucket is still full enough that we can get through certainly the end of the year. We're going into the budgeting process. I know that Duncan and ASM have already been starting that process with my person as well. And I think that's going to be a real key to see where we see those numbers. And I think we should take a really hard conservative approach, because I think a few months ago, we didn't think we'd be sitting here today still seeing this horrific business time. So that's clearly the main focus of the statement of net position, and why I wanted to kind of cover that second instead of first. Very minor things, but just in case anybody looks at it, as I mentioned, we have done the final true-up of the e-com closing, so anything related to parking or any of the e-com small hanging out items have been reconciled. The only open item that you do still see is line 1006 for the last parking cash. My person and the capitalized Albany person are going over how much of the cash just needs to be divvied up based on the closing statement, but it's really more just, minor. Right. So, any questions? I wish I had a crystal ball.
We all.
Me too.
Duncan, did you want to talk a little bit about the budget process?
We certainly can. The expectation a few months ago was that as part of Phase 4, this facility as a multi-purpose facility would be open. The reality is that we're limited, and the facility is at this point in time limited to 50 people, including staff. So the type of events that we can book, the type of events that people can have here, it's very limited. So that's changed our perspective. Using the revenue reports from Smith Travel Research and looking at the reduction in the hotel industry, running around 30% occupancy, running revenue less than a third of what it was just a year ago. We're going to adjust things to a very conservative level. And I think to simplify everything, the extent that we can go into 2021, any part of Q1, our quarter, 2021, will be dependent upon what hotel tax we receive, if any, for the balance of this year, and what revenue, if any, we receive from events. We're good through the first part of the quarter of 2021 with what we have. We are contracted, part of our contract requires us to maintain minimum reserves. We are over those reserves, so we can tap into what we call reserves if the board agrees, and use those to extend our period of operation in 2021.
We're not there yet.
But we're not there yet. But to be clear, if something can come into the bucket, as Len referred to it, form of either event revenue or additional hotel tax collected balance of the year, that will determine the extent to which we can operate in 2021 without taking different measures. But we all need to have a perspective, too, that this building was not designed to be closed completely. So we'd have to take a very hard look at how this building would be closed and yet preserved such that it could be open. That's a very difficult challenge for a building that was designed to be open all the time and to be used.
I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted you to bring that up.
Well, I think it's important to consider because we can reduce costs, too, to a point, but at what point in time do you shutter the building?
And what does it cost to get it up
Yeah.
again at some point?
Yeah.
Well, and the cost of keeping it shuttered, I think, I know from other experiences, things that are designed, even water running through pipes and things of that nature, there's a cost to not having that happen.
Right. Mike, did you have a comment?
Well, and then, sorry, Michelle, Joe, there's also the thing you got to consider, too, when we decide, when we talk about going down that path, and that is that it's a public facility that maybe need to be made available on a moment's notice for public use. So it's not, we wouldn't be able to mothball it. We'd have to calibrate the savings as it relates to that obligation as well. So, but as Duncan said, we're not there yet.
But I think that's the guidance that we need to receive because it will help us in terms of our budgeting. We have to establish what the minimum is. Our inclination is to be risk averse and to be very conservative. But we also have to take into account that we do have that public function, Joe. You're absolutely right. As recently as the other day, we were approached by the Department of Health to possibly use this as a staging area for the assembly of COVID kits. So, there will be those possibilities going forward that we need to be prepared for. I'm just speaking dollars and cents at this point. What we have available versus what we know are our expenses and where we're gonna be as of 12/31 of this year.
Thank you. Mike, did you have a comment?
Not awfully important now, but from a hotel perspective, we've had some of those same discussions. We're private versus public, but, there are ongoing costs, whether you're closed or open. And from our point, we didn't see those if we did a great job of cutting costs, we thought we were pretty similar and we might as well be open. Then you got a few bucks in revenue and you don't have to start the whole campaign over. So, it's, some people think that all the costs go away when you close, but in our hotel business, the only thing that goes away is labor.
Well,
I mean, there's a few things you can save, but you need people, walking the halls and making sure there's not a leak, and there's just things that you need to do, because you can come back in and be shocked of some of the problems, so it's a difficult decision.
As a board, I think you should be prepared to have messaging between now and September as we kind of work through this, because those are the same questions that we've had. What are the costs, and how do we balance all of this? So, okay, we're good with finances then?
As good as we,
Okay.
No. Thank you, Lynn.
thank you.
All right, this is a change in the agenda that you first received, and that is to make sure that everybody is here and we have that quorum. We're going to move the operator contract renewal up to item number 4. Duncan, will you take that?
I would ask you to turn to tab 5 of your booklets, or for those on the phone, to go to the amended and restated management agreement summary. We engaged HBS market study. We worked with Bob Ryan. We had Lynn review the existing contract. It was determined the existing contract could be a template for going forward. Bob made the necessary changes, taking out the pre-construction references, the pre-opening sales references, everything that had to do with getting this facility up and running, so that we would look at a simplified contract going forward. We also attempted to change those subjective portions of measurement, those decisions that had to be made by the EI committee and recommendations to the board that were based on assumptions, and tried to take that portion of the measurement and make it metric-based, utilizing the Destinations International information that's reviewed and approved, provided by Discover Albany. We've set up a series of metrics, and it's my understanding that ASM has agreed to this. We have a final draft contract that's been shared between the two parties, and we're prepared to present that in the form of the resolution which follows this summary to the board for its action, subject to any changes that may be required by Empire State Development Bond Council. Inasmuch as the project benefited from tax-exempt money from the beginning, Empire State Development reserves the right to review any contracts of this type or magnitude to make sure they're in compliance with the tax law having to do with tax-exempt funding. We don't know how long that will take, so the idea was to get it in front of the board as soon as possible this year. ASM was very helpful, working with Bob Belber, Doug McLean, Craig Liston, Bob McClintock, and others, to try to get it before the board today, because we have 2 more meetings this year. As you know, we have the one in September for budget, the one in October for Q3, but we didn't want to have a special meeting if we didn't have to, and we don't know how long it's going to take ESD to review the contract. On the presumption that their changes would be ministerial, the resolution that's before you, again, the one that follows the summary, provides for either the chair or the executive director independently to sign the contract based on your decision today if you agree to move forward. The information we received from HBS was based upon comparative venues, similar cities, similar relationships that ASM and other managers have with whatever the overseeing entity is. So we've set a cap. We've also made an adjustment in the annual adjustment to the base fee that's consistent with that at the Times Union Center, and we've made this coterminous with the new contract at the Times Union Center as well. Going back to the original purposes that we discussed way back when, entering the contract the first time. We wanted to operate on a parallel basis with our other partners as part of the capital complex. So the county timing was a little bit different. So what we've done now is adjust our contract so that it is coterminous again with the Times Union Center contract. And it has a 1 5-year renewal option with notice. Are there any questions about the summary or the resolution?
I'm assuming that people have reviewed, and if there are no questions, okay, can I have a motion?
This
I'll
is
move
Megan.
it.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Megan? And
I'll second that.
Could you ask again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who the second was.
The second?
This is Joe.
Joe or
It's Pete.
Okay.
Doug,
Okay.
all in favor?
All in favor? And do we need to do something on the phone to make sure?
We'll have the roll call, because it's money, we have to have a roll call.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, in the room, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That would be Mike Hoffman, and it would be Dan Lynch, and the chair. On the phone, if we can go one at a time, please, a roll call. May I ask Sarah Reginelli, are you in favor?
Aye.
Joe, are you in favor? Joe
I
Rubin?
am. Aye.
Well, Steve Lerner, are you in favor?
Yes, aye.
Megan.
Megan, are you in favor?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did I get everybody?
John McDonald.
John McDonald, I'm sorry, John, my apologies. Are you in favor?
Well, I'll have to reconsider after this delay, but yeah.
That's fair.
You're late to the party.
That's fair, John, I accept that, that's fair.
All right, yeah, that's it. Ignore the fat guy. Go ahead. Yeah, I got you.
Okay, then we have unanimous approval. Thank you
Okay.
so much. This takes such a burden off. We've got the time to find and to make sure that ESD will have the time to review this, and we'll keep it moving as far as that goes.
Yeah, Bob Ryan is out of town on business yesterday and today, so he couldn't be here. We'll inform him right away. He will send the draft copy. This is for ASM to know as well. He'll send the final draft copy to ESD for their review. We'll share any comments with the board that are substantive. Otherwise, if they're just ministerial things, we should be able to move ahead with this contract as soon as we hear from ESD. That's part of the process, so we don't really know how long it'll take. Thank you very much.
Duncan, this is Joe. If you have any problems when moving that along ESD to their review, just give me a call. It shouldn't take that long. It's closer to pro forma than anything. I don't want us waiting.
I appreciate that, Joe. Thanks very much. I was just trying to reflect the fact they've got other things going on, and it's a busy time, and then not everybody's working, through the offices and things like this. It was not a slam at ESD.
No, I didn't take it as a slam at all. I know there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on for everybody, and there's a lot of people they have available to conduct the work of the state.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And I have to say, this process was so smooth. I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was wonderful. So thank you to our partners, and glad we were able to move this. Now we go on to economic impact. Is that like an oxymoron now, or what?
Oh, it's an impact.
Negative measurable. Good morning. On behalf of Jill Delaney, who's present, the president and CEO of Discover Albany, and myself, Jay Cloutier, I'd like to present the second quarter economic impact report. The methodology has not changed since we have begun this process, so we'll move to the third slide. There were no reportable events for the second quarter of 2020. This report contains slides that have not changed from the first quarter report, and those two slides are the year-to-date economic indicators and the life of the building economic indicator, the final page of this report. Across the board, every segment that we measure saw a 100% decline year over year. So that's really doesn't leave a lot of interpretation or illustration or highlights. So we're just looking at the first half of 2019 to the first half of 2020. Again, we're seeing declines in most of those segments, and we will continue to see those declines as the parameters of the size of the events that are allowed to be held continue to be placed on our industry. I'll leave it there for questions. We are still, monitoring things. We did prepare a secondary report with the guidance from the audit committee. The 2020 Outlook Sales and Marketing. We did a little chart about hotel closures. I think mine printed out slightly differently than the one everybody's looking at. We did a small chart on hotel closures. We did see 2 hotels closed permanently, or as we define permanently. The Red Lion Hotel, 212 rooms on Wolf Road, has no clear plan to reopen as a hotel that we can identify. So we're determining that's a permanently closed hotel. And the Albany Airport Inn and Suite, one Residence Inn Drive out in Latham by the airport, has converted to an apartment complex. We've been made aware that they received preliminary approval from the town of Albany to convert to an apartment facility. So they will no longer be on the occupancy rolls for us. We have currently, by our assessment, 2 hotels that are not accepting guests. So Downtown Holiday Inn Express and the Spring Hill Suite on Central Avenue near the terminus at Fuller Road and Central Avenue. Both of those have plans to open soon. The Holiday Inn Express has extended their closure several times downtown. Simply no business to be had, so they're not opening up.
Do you want to mention they have books on the STR report when they split off? Because it does impact our number. It doesn't impact our bottom line,
Exactly.
but it impacts the percentages we're seeing.
Yeah, so STR, which is the measure of occupancy globally for destinations such as Albany, New York City, everywhere, they do market studies as well as individual destination studies. If you look at the occupancy 2019, 2020 bar chart, if you look at the end month of May, the 2020 occupancy for the month of May is 21.9%. Now, they're counting some hotels that were partially closed during the month of May or partially open during the month of May as part of that census. So that number isn't a true number of occupied rooms that are available to be occupied. There was a full week where we were counting 312 empty rooms at Lion that were no longer on the market. So it's very hard for STR to really gain a true sense of what your occupancy number is because of these variable openings and closings in our market. But as you can see in that bar chart, we were tracking January, February for a strong 2020 first quarter, and then mid-March you can clearly see that the drop-off. April seems to be the basement right now, with 18% occupied versus 58% normal occupancy for that time of year. June did come out since the construction of this report, and we did see a further increase in occupancy to a 29% occupancy for Albany County. But again, June was a stronger month than May, so increase in occupancy didn't keep pace with traditional occupancy for that particular month. The segments that are seeing the most strength are the long-term stay properties and interstate properties and low to mid-scale properties, the Hampton Inns, the Hilton Garden Inns, the full-service, large properties that drive higher rates for our market continue staggering losses. STR, in partnership with Tourism Economics, predicts The hotel demand will not expect to fully recover until 2023, and average daily rate recovering to pre-2020 levels will take at least 5 years. Pause.
Wow.
Mike can no longer swim.
Wow.
Yikes.
Sales and services activities, at the very beginning of the pandemic, the New York State pause, we reached out to 135 plus existing clients from our convention calendar, checking in, offering guidance, and lending an ear. We've had programmatic outreach to new venues or venues that support activities in our market that do drive room rates, rooms. We've scheduled an education on-site here at the Capitol Center in conjunction with Shannon. I'll leave a little room for her to talk about that today. We're excited about that relationship build and that educational opportunity. On Monday, we begin our very first virtual trade show. This is a sports, entertainment, and tour association, events and tour association virtual trade show that was canceled in August. They've gone virtual. My appointments came in very late last night. We'll review those appointments, and there will be an opportunity, if it makes sense, to do those virtual appointments with the Capitol Center, with the Union Center, or with some of our hotel partners. We're excited about that nuanced opportunity that maybe will help our destination grow in appreciation of how we do work together as individual units towards a common goal. We did develop an essential association list to target groups that might be leading meeting holders. This list has become less and less valuable as people start losing their jobs. Our contact management will be job one in the coming months to find out who's still employed, who's still a decision maker for when we can actually, execute deals and bring in leads. Film Albany has been a very active and promising avenue for our destination. Through the leadership of Deb Gedeke, our Convention Services Manager and Film Commissioner for Albany County, with the support of Jill Delaney, she's been actively working with our qualified production facilities at 15 Warren Street. She's assisted the Albany Hilton to get their qualified production facilities certification. She's also working with the Albany Marriott. She has brought in people to look at the facilities to make decisions as to whether or not this would be the right place to launch productions moving forward when those productions become approved by the state. She's met with Netflix, HBO, Manifest TV. She did a site tour of all qualified production facilities Wednesday morning. She's optimistic that when things start to move, there will be demand, and we will be able to fill some of that demand.
If I can add, we're also looking at things going down so quickly in the south, and a lot of Georgia production needing to speak elsewhere, so that's another avenue.
Okay. We don't want to profit on everybody else's back.
Somebody's got to think about it, right?
We'll
Might
take
as well
it.
be us.
On the marketing side, we are in the process of developing a Discover Albany application. This application will also offer conventions and password protection part of the application where we can be a conference app intertwined with our destination application. So we're working with our marketing team to develop that. It's in the process right now. We've added a live chat to our albany.org website to really respond to those individual travelers coming into our destination asking the question, I'm coming from Washington, D.C., what are my requirements? Those kinds of things. We did do a lot of work for rescheduled events that have since canceled, such as the bar exam, really highlighting the fact that a lot of our initial plans were in expectation of a 30, 60, 90-day pause. That obviously has changed. We've also developed contactless or a touchless way to download our visitors guide, our regional maps, the downtown map and the Wolf Road map. That's something that's very promising for us in our estimation. And then a snapshot of Discover Albany's presence on the World Wide Web and through our social media outlets. We've really done an excellent job doing a lot of outreach. I think New York City is one area where we can see people following us and reading our blogs and following our posts on Instagram. So we're focusing some of our marketing strategies moving forward in that direction. Both Jill and I are open to questions if anybody should have any.
Any other comments?
And add, you're seeing where our target audience currently is on social media. We're focusing on drive market only. Obviously, nobody could come in from Canada. Our drive market keeps shrinking, so from a 5-hour range to, now it's, you can come from Maine, but the only 5-hour distance we've got right now coming into us. So we're just constantly monitoring the.
One has to, because it changes daily.
Right. And we did add, I don't know if Jay mentioned it as part of this, but we added a chat function to our website because we don't have a visitor center open, so we built the virtual visitor center and added that chat function. And the questions that we're getting there are predominantly from out of state, people wondering what the protocol is going to be. I think the first person we were still setting it up, and somebody started a chat with us. We didn't know what the noise was in the background, and it was somebody from California asking, like, can I stay in a hotel? Am I allowed?
For 2 weeks, yay.
Can I quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks? And, like, at that point, we didn't even know the answers to these questions, so we're frantically searching and answering, but it's been really helpful. But that's the majority of states that have to quarantine are asking us how to do it.
Great,
And Michelle, the only thing that I would add to, there's so much talk always about occupancy, and occupancy's plummeted, but of equal damage is the rate. Rates for rooms are, it's just occupancy. You say, oh, well, I'm down 20 points in occupancy. Well, I'm down, 50% in rate. You don't need to make a reservation anymore. Nobody makes a reservation. You just show up because every hotel has rooms available. And if you want to have a higher rate, they don't pick you. So I don't know that I read that, I've been reading about Star. I get those emails every day. And I don't know if it's 5 years, but it's a period of time for sure before rates are going to come back. And, you just got to figure out what this looks like down the road. But, it's very difficult to try and push rate at all when you're either playing the rate game or the occupancy game. It's hard to play them both.
Right.
Now we're just trying to get customers, so we're playing the occupancy game at the expense of rate.
And we see that playing out in our because obviously the lower the rate, we're at a percentage, not $1 per room night. So that's an issue. And we also, because of we're pursuing a tourism improvement district for Albany County. And in that process, we had to step back and redo all of our projections based on where things are and where SDR and tourism economics are predicting they're going to go. And when we got the numbers, we said, well, this doesn't anywhere match. The occupancy numbers don't match our collections. And that's when we were able to see that while it's normal for a destination to have like 8, even as much as 15% of their total occupancy be non-taxable, so there's no collection, we're at 26%. And that's not now, that's over a couple of years. So on average, 26% of collections tax exempt. Our research mirrors what like DC sees because of them being such a nonprofit driven market. So that's as well. Michelle, you can see your eyes.
Well, that's just a huge increase.
It is, yeah.
Huge increase.
Well, and during this, a lot of the business that's coming in that we're seeing is tax exempt for 30 days, 70 days. If you have anybody coming in quarantine, they're going to not be tax exempt because they're going to automatically be at a longer stay. So we're just seeing a lot of that type of business. So whatever we see in occupancy, not playing out in our collections.
So let me just ask from a kind of a macro New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association. Has there been any movement for Airbnb or VRBO rentals and collection of occupancy tax on those? Because, counties are enacting, and it's probably going to all go by the court state. Maybe John.
I may have an update. I know Pat Bailey has the legislation.
So, this is John McDonald. The Assembly has still been slow to move on it, to be honest with you. We have not really, for some reason, there's a lot of different reasons. It deals with the hotel trade down in the city of New York. But, they also fall back on the fact that counties have the opportunity to do their own agreement as well, but that's not always easy.
Not easy.
But you're right. It's actually more critical now than ever before.
They don't have the negotiating power that a larger
Right.
statewide legislation would have, and so they'll get trapped, which is why we haven't pursued one here, even though the impact is starting to exponentially change. It's shifting in the wrong direction for us as far as collections go. But if we get trapped into an agreement with just Airbnb and then it's applied across the board to all short-term rental opportunities, we'll be trapped. We won't really have an opportunity to escape that. So the guidance has been to wait legislation. I understand the hesitation. If there's a way, and I think I probably need to talk to Pat about it directly, but if there's a way for us to separate out New York City from this, that's a common thing where New York City gets carved out because their business functions very differently than the rest of the state. It really is their hotel lobbying firm, which is one of the most, the hotel union has such power. We can't make a lot of things happen that include that part of the state.
Yeah.
Okay. John, I think we'll be pushing a little bit.
No, and we should push it. And, I look at it also from a whole different perspective. There's a whole safety component that needs to be involved here. And I think that's one of the issues I've always pushed is that we need to make sure these are safe. And they've been chewing away at the hotel industry. Listen, we want to grab the tax, but we also make sure that everyone's working off as a level playing field as possible. And but the points about the city union is really it's been very challenging, and it's unfortunate because it's a revenue item that's there for the picking.
And growing.
And to be clear, Jill, the 26% is for the not-for-profits. That does not include any impact from Airbnb or other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those are not part of the calculation. The Airbnb impact has been growing significantly.
And that would be
Hard to track.
hard to track, obviously, but not included in the 26%.
No, not at all. That is above and beyond. So as I think I mentioned in the previous meeting, for anybody who was there, for our 2018 tourism economic numbers, we were at $1 billion in direct visitor spending, but our tax collection declined. So we had the highest visitor spending and visitation, but our collections were down, and that was directly correlated not with the nonprofit organizations, but with the increase in Airbnb. So we're doing more work as organizations for people and not getting paid to do it.
Okay. That's, I think, very important information for this board to know.
Yep.
Shannon,
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I have to drop off, by the way. I'm sorry, I have to drop off.
Thank you so much.
We'll now move into ASM's sales and marketing report for you guys. As of actually last week, and when this report was finalized, we did actually have one event book. So I do get to update the first line of our report. They're actually here today in meeting room 1A and 1B, so we're very excited about that. But moving on to the rest of our numbers, currently we've had 76 events canceled. Please note that 6 of those events represent contracts that we did out there that decided not to proceed forward. I have a breakdown of the mix of different types of events that did cancel. Not surprisingly, meetings was at the top of that list, followed by social events. All of those events altogether encompass 136 event days. We still have 7 events that have officially postponed into the 2020 calendar, but I do suspect that some of those, especially some that went in September and October, we might find postponed again into the 2021 year. We still actually have 9 events that are still considering what they're going to do. That's really the story that we're getting from a lot of the meeting planners and a lot of people that we're dealing with, much like us around this table, are waiting for directives, so are they. So some are kind of trying to wait it out. Some are trying to change programs to make it fit within the parameters that they need to, and some people, again, the comment that Jay had made, are dealing with their offices being split by staff, their offices being down to maybe one person, and, just trying to deal with that before they concentrate on building a program again. But as of our totals for 2020, we have 71 events in total. That's actually 72 as of today. 103 event days, a little over 33,000 people, and our hotel room nights are estimated down at 3,391. We do still have 2 additional contracts out. They are specifically for December. So, again, we have some people that are hesitant even still to sign those contracts because they're waiting still for guidance, or they have meetings that are above that 50 number, just waiting for that meeting. Obviously, if we compare to where we were last year, we were, at 200 events, and obviously this board knows that last year was one of our best. So while it's hard to see those numbers, it's always good to compare where we were. For 2021, you see a very healthy, reschedule for some and new conferences for others. A very healthy list, I think, and a list that shows that our team is working hard to either get stuff rescheduled in the calendar successfully or get new events booked. We have a new conference that's booked. That's going to bring 515 hotel room nights in, also with partnership with Discover Albany. That was a very long time coming. That conference took over a year for this area to book, so that's great. We also had a wedding book for next year, too, which I think is a good sign. So, I know it's hard to kind of paint a good picture on all of this, but I do think there's some things that show us, a good picture. We do also have a few events that have already canceled for next year, some of which, are out of our control, so sporting events being canceled, and a convention that is truly based around teachers, knowing that the school districts moving forward will absolutely have no budget for teachers to go and travel, and for school districts really to kind of get behind the virtual or hybrid world very quickly, because there's still certifications and mandates that they have to put out to their people. So while we've seen a slow decline, I'm glad that we're just at the 3 numbers there. We are still working with a few people to postpone their events from 2020 into 2021. There's contracts out there. We're working on force majeure clauses and terminologies in our contract, so it's taking a little bit longer sometimes to get that stuff through. But for 2021, we're sitting at 36 events, 65 event days, 21,000 people and change, and a little over 6,000 hotel room nights. And you see, we're not tracking too far off from where we were looking last year ahead of year. So I'm not altogether panicked yet. Although I do wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and start texting Doug some crazy things. So, we're all in this together. So I have some things that I do want to make sure that we point out, some stuff that our team has been doing. I definitely want to touch on what Jay had said. We are conducting today a tour for Capitol Hill Management. They are a third-party meeting planner, and the whole idea behind the premise is actually taking it back to the days when we used to tour with Duncan, day after day, multiple times a day. This market, everyone wants to feel and touch and understand everything, and we're all visual people. Everyone in the event business is visual. We're all just work better that way. So the idea came, let's show people what it looks like to have a board meeting, social distancing. Let's show people what it looks like to get them outside of the box of thinking that you do have to put everyone in the same room for a general session and then break them out into breakouts. The concept today is to show this group of people a general session can be streamed from the upstairs of our building. Attendees can very comfortably already be seated in the breakouts that they're going to continue in after the general session is over, get the general session information, and seamlessly move on to the rest of their track without even having to leave their seats. It's a concept that I think for meeting planners is going to be a little bit of a hard road to break them out of that habit of that normal traditional pattern. But I think it's the best way for us to help start move that needle a little bit. And whether groups are thinking right now, obviously we're mandated to 50 people or 20 people or, vice versa, we have to show them what's possible and show them that there is a way to move forward, other than just stop. We have a lot of the clients that we've talked to that they, much like we're talking about today, we're okay with getting through this year, but we have to have a meeting next year. We have to find a way to do it. So we want to be spear leaders and be leaders with Discover Albany in this mission of showing people how they can move forward and that there is a process and that our technology is here and our team is here to help. The hope is that after today's tour, we can extend it further and maybe have other people come in or other groups or other associations and kind of keep the ball rolling, and show people, what we have to offer. So I'm very, very excited about that today.
Well, I think your webinar on Tuesday really helped people visualize what can happen, and I know that's been saved and can be shown to others as well, but ACES did that. It really had a good visually, here's what the room would look like.
Yeah, it's been a great series. That was actually great segue, Michelle, thank you. Because my next point was going to be talking about July. We did our Expert in the Room webinar series. Every single event that we had 25 plus people register and probably more than that viewing it on Facebook Live. The largest session we had was food and beverage, no big surprise there. That had 25 plus people in attendance. But from that event alone, not only did our team feel great about the information and the product we're putting out there, but we were able to actually book the event that is here today because of that. We're working with SA, who's coming to us next month, which is just in a couple of days. It's crazy. They are going to be doing their first hybrid event, where people can come in person and then live stream the rest of it. So she is trying our technology out on April 12th. Obviously, Film Albany has been here once, and I believe Deb Getty is coming back again. So it's been a very fruitful exercise for us, in addition to really getting us, to be able to be out there with some information. We've had some great guests, and some really good topics that I think have helped our clients for sure and allowed us to get even more feedback from that process. We also have put together a COVID resource page on our website, which has become a great resource and a great tool. All of the webinars are up on that resource page. All of the question and answers from all of those webinars have also been included on that page. So if people didn't get a chance to see it, or if they want to send it and share with their teams, they're able to do that. Baker PR has put together a toolkit for us, a COVID research toolkit, so that we can easily send some more information out to our clients. So it's kind of a little bit of a domino effect, which has been great for us to kind of take that forward. Little things, too, that I want to make sure you guys know, our team is staying up to date. Doug lovingly called me a bookworm the other day, which I've never been called in my entire life, so it was funny. But we're all staying up to date as best as possible in what we can. I've taken on a couple of extra certifications during this time, specifically around COVID awareness. Our team actually has signed up through CVET, which has offered some amazing free certifications to suppliers right now, which has been a great resource. But they're doing a social distancing diagram certification. So our entire team is going to be certified in appropriately designed plans to social distancing lines. In addition to that, our system, Social Tables, has put in sort of a widget, I guess you would call it, that allows you to click on it, and it double checks your diagram to make sure you are following all the up-to-date social distancing rules. So there's a lot of really cool tools out there that our team is staying very up to date about. We want to make sure that when people are ready and calling us, which they are, that we're ready to service them.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. If we can move into operations, and I know it's very important information, but as quick as possible, because we do have a couple of things we have to take care of in executive session. I don't want to miss those. So, ASM, Doug, you're up.
Yep. First of all, thank you all on the contract. Greatly appreciate it. looking at the building readiness, we are in a great spot as far as being able to welcome people through the doors. I hope those in attendance today were able to see some of the signage that we've put in. We have created the directional flow. We have hand sanitizing stations all over the place. We have, never thought you needed, but social distancing signage in the bathrooms. We have, really covered every, aspect of the facility. A big portion of that came from ASM Global, who launched a program called Venue Shield, which is a reactivation plan for ASM Global for all their facilities. And it covers 6 components for reopening: environmental hygiene, work safety, food and beverage, technology and equipment, the customer journey, and then public awareness. So we've taken those 6 components and have created quite a large document that we have that we operate for the facility, and then we have also shrunk that down for the clients as well, make it more concise so they're not reading 240 pages of how to wipe down the table or how long does the disinfectant have to sit on the table. So we've really gotten that buttoned down. In conjunction with our Venue Shield program, we are working with GBOC, which is Global Biorisk Advisory Council, and we're doing a third-party accreditation. And basically, this has been the industry standard now as far as a third-party accreditation for public facilities, and they make sure that what you're doing is right. They review your protocols, they help train your staff, and then they give you that certification at the end that this is a third, this is an accredited GBOC facility. So a lot of the larger convention centers are doing that now. The arenas are doing it. ASM Global has started working with GBOC more closely to do this. So we anticipate that coming through, within a month. I think we'll have that completed. We have developed a contact tracing app with our ticketing platform. It's free to us and it's free to the client, so that we have clients are able to register. We collect all their information before they get here. We just scan their phone on a barcode when they come in. It's free to everybody, but it gives us that ability to capture their information. God forbid there is an issue here at the facility. We have taken our parking kiosk, which is downstairs. We moved it upstairs into the lobby so it's clean. Right now it is, you do have to use a credit card to use it, but we're developing an app to pay on your phone, and you'll be able to raise the gate via Bluetooth via your phone. So again, making it touchless, and we're working on that right now. We took our visitor kiosk that's in the main lobby, which was a touch screen, and we used the QR codes for that and converted that. Also, advantage of that is we were able to cancel our subscription with that service, so there's some cost savings there, and it now serves as a digital display. So we have that in. Before we get to the air quality, I just want to, actually, Duncan, would you mind discussing a little bit about the O2?
Not a problem at all. In February, we began some discussions with Clough Harbor, the engineer of record, and with ASM about what they're doing in other facilities concerning air quality. The concern was the presence of viruses, bacteria, and mold within the breathing zone, that area of about 3 feet above the floor to about 8 feet above the floor for the taller people that are in the room. The technology is not new. Cold plasma has been around since the 80s. Probably came about as a result of Legionnaire's disease and other things. Currently, it's called bipolar ionization, and it's essentially charging the airflow on the incoming side of coils to be able to gather particles such that they drop out of the airstream through the filtering and through normal cleaning process. So the delivered air in the breathable zone, that 3 foot above floor where you would be if you're sitting, and up to 8 feet if you were standing or on a podium or anything like that, is of a higher quality by virtue of the removal of viruses, bacteria, and mold. The technology is proven. The evidence here is not clear yet, but through Clough Harbor, we've entered into a no-cost agreement with Siemens International to install in one unit, the unit that covers the back of house, a set of bipolar ionization brushes that test. I believe it's going to start on the 3rd of August. It'll run for a couple of weeks. We'll have some post-event testing that we'll share with you. The pre-event testing or pre-testing has been done, so we have measurements outside the building and at 8 places inside the building. In response to the governor's guidelines, those from New York State, Doug and his team have begun a change out of the filters in the building to which was what was specified, to MERV 11, which is currently available. We were not able to get MERV 13, but we have, for our future changeouts, ordered MERV 13. So we're in place. We're in queue to receive those for the next changeout.
Which is in the fall.
Which will be in the fall normally. However, the combination, if we move ahead with the bipolar ionization and the change of filters, we may have to change filters more often, but probably clean coils less often. So it's part of the whole test. It's not offsetting, but there are a combination of savings and additional costs. Before we come to the board with a request to spend money, we're also fully exploring the possibility of getting a NYSERDA grant. Doug is also pursuing the possibility of a federal grant through some of the most recent programs. We're looking at things from National Grid. We already have an application from National Grid because when you filter the air, you typically have to take in less exterior air, so you end up with energy savings. The percentages can be as high as 25%. We don't know what will apply to this facility. That's summarized for you as part of the update. There's a summary on the status of this agreement. It's under the Interior Air Quality and Filtering Review that's in your packet. For those in the room, it's under tab. Doug, did that cover what you're doing?
Yeah, and I just know Denver Convention Center, ASM Global Facility, they are a step ahead of us, and they have started installing the full system. Ironically, they have started before this pandemic, and it was more of an energy savings project than it was a COVID response project. So, as Duncan mentioned, with the possibility of funding from whether it's a NYSERDA grant or an energy savings grant, I think that's what the savings. Two other quick points that I had unrelated to the COVID, but we went to, during this time, we went out to RFP for our audiovisual preferred partner. Previously it was CMI. We had an RFP. We issued an RFP. We received 4 really good responses. ACES is now our preferred partner. They'll start actually August 1st. So CMI's contract had ended at the end of December, and we were on a month-to-month basis. So during this time, we went ahead and went out to a full RFP. ACES was the last of our audiovisual expert in the room, and it went really well. So that was good. And then also during this time, we went out to RFPs for our website. We got 4 responses for that. 3 qualified. 1 was incomplete. Their hours and stuff didn't make sense. Obviously, given the cost and of what it is to redo a website completely, we're talking to the RFP to the responders and see if there's options for deferred payment, monthly payment, to see if there's any option, if it's even feasible for us to move forward. But it is something right now that we're exploring. We had planned this at the beginning of the year. Our website, was up prior to opening, so we're definitely due for an overhaul. And we find that, especially now with the need to continually update the message that you're putting out there, our website right now limits us on the areas that we could update at no cost and do it in-house versus what we would need Spiral to do. So.
Hey, Doug, could I ask you, it's Megan, could I ask you a question going back to that AV RFP?
Yes.
That's a big deal for us, the change. I wonder if you could talk through just a little bit of what is different or better or, just a change to ACES in terms of the selection.
Sure thing. There's 3, I would say 3 key points. 1, ACES is a local company, and their warehouse is 25 minutes away, and we do not run into the issue of having equipment needed to be shipped up from Washington or Rochester.
Great.
Also, their commissions to the ACC is 10% higher than what CMI was offering. And so obviously that's a great help to the bottom line. And another key factor, two more key factors. ACES is going to install LED screens up in the upper level and use those rather than projections screens and offer that to the client. which is obviously a huge upgrade to the client. And again, because he's local, he doesn't have to worry about being used in another facility or shipped to another city. And then final point in the discount program, traditionally what has happened in the past is if CMI offered a client a discount, they would offer their discount on equipment only, which is what the ATC received their commissions on. And ACES agreed to, if there is a discount, it's equally shared between the equipment and the labor, so that they're not just discounting our portion, they're discounting the entire bill. So those are really the four main pieces that were changed. And ACES references, Bob and I have worked with them for 20 years at the Times Union Center. Governor's office works with them, state works with them, so reference checks were great.
That's great. I think that's big news. I think that's something that comes up a lot on the survey responses, right? And that's something you always taught us was very important to the customer satisfaction.
Yes.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. I neglected to point out the Gramercy report summary, and it is in your packet. I've asked for some changes to this report, Duncan, as we move forward, and we'll report back to you because we'll be meeting with strategies with Gramercy next week. Right?
Correct.
Okay. So we do have two issues that I will move through quite quickly, and they don't need any votes. So before we lose people on the phone, I would like to conclude this meeting, and unless there's any other business.
Need a motion?
Yes.
Move to executive session.
Yep.
Okay.
So can I have a motion to move to executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dan. Second? Michael? Thank you. Thank
Do
you.
you want me to say?
I'll just be right back to confirm the recording.
That's right. For those on the phone, we're going to leave the line open on the phone. Doug is going to end the public link at this time so that you can have the executive session, and then we will resume the public link on the other side of the executive session once you come out of executive session. And of course, there would be a motion at that time indicating that you did not take any action. No action will be taken during executive session.
Okay.
to re-enter public session.
Make the motion.
Okay, we got a 1 and 2 here.
Great,
Okay?
thank you. And we need to make the statement that no actions
No
were
actions
taken.
were taken during the executive session of the Board of Directors.
Okay.
Okay? So now we need to close the public meeting, yes?
Unless there's any other business?
Any other business?
None for me.
Thank you all for hanging in so long. May I have a motion?
Thank you all. I'll make a motion to adjourn. It's Megan. Thank you very much.
Megan, and
Thank
Dan
you,
is the
Megan.
second. Okay, thank you all.
Okay. and
Thank you.
closes at 34.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Good meeting.